All right, now let's go into our SWOT analysis, our state of the market report for the South Asian wedding market in New Jersey. My name is Samir Singhani. I've done a lot of research with regards to the state of the market. I've been a wedding photographer for 20 years, and here are my findings on the market in 2025. All right, so let's jump right in. Number one, strengths of the market. We're seeing a lot of great demand for weddings and coverage for weddings from studios that offer services for photography and video services. So demand has definitely kept up, especially as the population of the South Asian community here in New Jersey continues to grow. There's a lot of demand for services. So that's a great strength of this market. Second strength is that this culture is very rich and vibrant in terms of colors. There's a lot of colors and tones that are really vibrant in nature. The culture is rich. There's a lot of rituals that a lot of other cultures emulate. They love to see Indian weddings. You hear about it all over the place. People want to join the Bharat. They love the festivities. They love the haldi. They love all the different rituals that take place. That's definitely a big strength of the South Asian market. Studios who have a specialization in South Asians have an edge. So where customers have the ability to see a portfolio of a wedding photographer and see many of the Indian weddings that they've covered, that gives them a leg up in the space because they're showing their expertise in video, they're showing their expertise in photo, and they're able to show that they understand the culture, they understand some of the nuances with regards to the culture. That's a big strength in the market as well. Indian weddings on average tend to have a higher budget compared to any other culture because Indian weddings have multiple functions, multiple days. They generally require bigger teams if there's a lot of guests in attendance. We're seeing that be a big strength in the market as well. So the total budget for Indian weddings, because the enormous size and the number of functions, is a strength in the market if you're a studio that's looking to target the South Asian market. We're also seeing a lot of resilience in this market as well, especially as we went through the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of couples didn't cancel their weddings. They may have postponed them, but they still held them. And many couples that we saw in 2020 started to opt for smaller backyard style weddings. Maybe they didn't have the 3 to 4 to 500 person wedding. They instead decided to have an intimate gathering of 75 to 100 people and maybe not choose a large venue, maybe offer a venue or a park or even their backyard. We saw that trend continue into 2021, 2022. Now, as we get into 2025 and the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of family members start to very rigorously look to host their weddings that they postponed for so many years. Some couples decided not to get married and they decided just to hold off and then wait until the time was right. And we're starting to see that demand jump back up again. So the pandemic, while that offered a little bit of a speed bump in terms of the coverage, or we saw lower demand during that time period, we just saw a little bit change in demand. So instead of having a big elaborate Indian wedding, couples started to opt for smaller weddings and still held it, or if not, decided to postpone it. And then we're starting to see that catch up now. So we're obviously seeing a lot of resilience. We're seeing a lot of good uptake with regards to photography and video services. And that's kind of started to pan out. And we're starting to see that trend continue into 2025. There's a number of weaknesses in this market too. So because Indian weddings are so long, they're very long hours, multiple days. As a wedding photographer, it takes a lot of endurance to be able to keep up and be able to be smiling, be able to constantly have that endurance to manage multiple functions and be able to do so with the utmost energy. That's a weakness in this market. So having the tenacity and the endurance to be able to keep up has been a big weakness in the market. So if you're a wedding photographer or a cinematographer looking to get into the space, know that you're dealing with long hours. You're dealing with sometimes you may not have food for many hours, and then also multiple functions. So being able to keep up your creativity under that type of environment is definitely a weakness. We alluded to this before around the long post-production cycles. Because this market is so seasonally based, you have your weddings that are normally back to back between the early spring or if anything early summer. So you figure around like March, April timeframe all the way through October, November. You tend to get backed up with regards to your post-production. Having the backlog then causes downstream effects because then customers get upset because they don't have their photos, they don't have their videos, and that leads them to feel dissatisfied with the service. So that's a big weakness in the market, is being able to kind of keep up with the demand and keep up with the promised timeframes that clients expect of you, especially when seasonality is a big factor. Another weakness in the market is high operational costs. So there's a number of different expenses that you need to budget for if you're getting into this market. There's costs for gear, there's costs for websites, there's costs for editing, there's costs to be able to service your client and service your gear, maintain that gear. If you need business insurance, that's a cost. There's a lot of overhead when it comes to getting in the market. But once you have the assets from an ROI perspective, it can generally pay dividends for a number of years to come. And as cameras get bigger, not bigger, but as cameras get smaller, as they get higher quality, as the gear gets smaller, having the ability to kind of maintain that gear, you don't want to get gear happy because then that starts to affect your margins a bit. But having the ability to then manage your budgeting around gear, once you have a set camera body and lens, being able to use that as long as possible, but maintaining it is definitely going to be worthy in the long run. So that way you save on costs because you do need a budget for other things, like the other things I mentioned, like website, being able to manage, your post-production, any other lighting gear or audio gear or filters or that sort of thing. Being able to budget for that is going to be really key. So another weakness in the market is the high operational costs or capital intensive costs to get started in the market. Another weakness in the market is you have only so many weekends in the year. And so if all the weddings tend to happen around the same seasonal time frame between April or March through about October, November, that means there's only roughly like 26 weeks, and you're going to run into scheduling conflicts. You may have 2 weddings get booked on the same weekend, or you may only be able to just take one at a time. So because this is market so seasonally based, you really have to be really careful about what jobs you take. You don't want to book yourself out for a lower cost way in advance, because then that becomes an opportunity cost for you to say no to revenue that may come from another inquiry. So being able to be strategic with what you book, when you book it, and be able to expect the demand that can come up is really important. So managing your calendar, managing your pricing, kind of balance that risk reward between booking out a wedding date or wedding weekend at a cost that you're happy with, but knowing that once you take that means you need to say no to somebody else. Another weakness in the market is managing client expectations. So we talked about things like turnaround time previously. Not to say Indian people are really picky, they're not. I mean, if you set expectations at the very beginning on exactly what type of content or what's the output of their photos and videos are going to be, that's really important to set those expectations up front, because on the back end of that, if you deliver something that the client didn't expect, chances are that's going to be a very tough conversation, and there's a number of different things that need to be dealt with there. Clients also will negotiate as well. Knowing that there's over 80 plus studios, or maybe even up to 100 studios out in New Jersey now, everyone's fighting for the same gig. That same customer that's calling you is also calling 5 other studios as well. So knowing that who's going to win that business means you need to bring your A game. You need to be very competitive. You need to have a compelling portfolio. Being able to manage those client conversations, not a weakness per se, but just something to be aware of as you kind of dive into the market. Now, on the bright side, there's a number of opportunities in this market as well. So knowing that the South Asian market and the South Asian population is growing, that means there's more and more weddings, there's more and more events to come. So not just weddings themselves, but also if you look at baby showers or birthday parties or anniversary parties, there's always content you can create. There's always events you can cover. So if you're not covering a wedding during the summertime, you could supplement some of your income with some of these smaller functions that take place in between the weddings. So knowing that there's a number of functions beyond the wedding day that can translate to revenue for you for other types of functions such as baby showers or even birthday parties, that's a big opportunity in this market. Another big opportunity we're seeing in this market is the rise of AI tools. So as we talked about earlier, that the post-production cycle is very difficult for some photographers to manage. We're seeing that there's opportunity for us to help improve the life cycle and how we can deliver to clients our photos and our videos. For photos specifically, there are a number of algorithms out there and tools out there that can be used to help cull images or even edit images. So for example, if you've got 2 duplicate photos, AI nowadays can determine that it's a duplicate photo and pick the better one of the 2. So therefore a human doesn't need to do that, or you don't need to do that. So there are tools out there that can allow you to be able to manage your culling, be able to reduce the time it takes to deliver to your client, and also even post-processing. Now you may look at some tools like Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop. There are third-party vendors out there that can learn from your editing style if you train it. There are startups that we partner with to be able to kind of help support our post-processing, which we can talk about in another video. We are seeing that there's a big opportunity for us to automate the process of editing, or at least reduce our workflow or improve our workflow by being able to turn around our photos much more quickly. That's a big opportunity in this market. We talked about earlier around the rise of social media and some of these like other platforms like Instagram and TikTok. Couples nowadays want to see their films and their photos on these social media platforms. So back in the day, the delivery used to be on a hard drive, or even if you go way back further, a Blu-ray disc or a CD, and no one would ever be able to even see those pictures. Nowadays, everyone demands that the photos and their videos be shown or be compatible with their smartphones or their tablets or their computers. I think we're way past that era of customers getting a disc or getting some sort of Blu-ray DVD where they can watch their video. I think we're way beyond that at this point. So the rise of social media platforms, the rise of being able to instantly gratify yourself with content that is from the wedding day is a big opportunity we're seeing in the market. And I'm sure there's going to be many more tools out there that are going to be made available that will allow us to be able to kind of cater to that demand. But big opportunity in the market that allows us to then resell services or be able to kind of spread our brand recognition out there. Something you may want to look into as well. We talked about earlier, another opportunity is live streaming. So as customers, as the global world becomes much more virtual in nature, people still want to attend. So if they can't attend, what other options do we have? So for studios that offer video services, can offer live streaming services and then use that as a way to be able to help cater to that demand. So having live streaming services as part of your services that you offer for video can be a big opportunity for you. Okay, now let's get into threats of the market. As we see the cost of gear get cheaper and cheaper, the rise of the native content creator, there's a much lower barrier to entry. Nowadays, everyone's got a camera. Everyone can create content, whether it's with your phone, with the Sony camera, with the Canon camera. The threat to the market is that now we're seeing a lot more hobbyist photographers start to provide services. So that means you as a studio need to then not just document what takes place on the wedding day, but be able to offer your skill, be able to help really service your customer. That's what's really going to help you stand out. The threat of lower cost cameras, the threat of tools becoming cheaper now lowers the barrier to entry for content creators and for new entrants into the market. But that now means that your job is to now provide better skills and provide better service for your customers. We talked about earlier around the other threats around other content creators. So like the iPhone offer or the videographer that just basically is using a phone or some sort of simple gear to shoot behind the scenes content. It's not necessarily a threat per se. If anything, there's probably more of a way for us to collaborate with these types of freelancers. So if you're offering services to your customers as photography and video, then partnering with someone that can offer social media first type of content or behind the scenes content with an iPhone may be a way to help differentiate yourself. We're starting to see that come up more and more in today's market. And so therefore being able to kind of partner with some of these other freelancers may be a good way to help differentiate your service. Another threat to the market is going to be the more expensive things are getting. You're seeing it everywhere. House prices are going up. The prices of eggs are going up. We're seeing the cost for everything rise. That's really becoming a real threat. And so as individuals are hosting bigger weddings, the cost itself is getting enormous. So you start to see clients become a little more budget conscious with their spend. They want to try to get what they need, but do so at an affordable rate. We're seeing inflation run rampant. So being able to kind of be very empathetic with your client is super important. So that way you can cater budgets to your clients based on their needs and based on how much they have available to spend. Maybe that changes in a couple of years with the economy, but knowing that clients may require you to negotiate or be able to offer services that are a little more within their range is something to consider as well. Another threat in the market is going to be any type of, another threat in the market is going to be high client expectations. So because there's so many rituals taking place on any wedding day or any wedding for that matter, we're starting to see that customers have very high expectations, making sure they're covering their grandparents, making sure that they're covering all the different rituals that are taking place, making sure that every family member is captured. Again, we talked around earlier about having endurance for you to be in great shape and being able to have the endurance to capture the wedding day, if not the wedding weekend, that's definitely a threat. Some customers have definitely complained if we didn't capture one person that was really important that came from the other side of the globe. That's a threat to be aware of, but setting client expectations in advance during timeline calls or upfront with your customer, with your client, is definitely recommended. So that way, if there's any special moments that they're looking for, pictures with people that are really, really important, or family heirlooms that they may be holding, having those conversations early on in the process, types of poses that they want, what kind of inspiration that they're looking at based on what pictures that they've seen on the internet, having the ability to set those expectations with your client is definitely recommended. Lastly, the threat around AI is becoming really real. We're starting to see some tools become available now that allow some photographers or even videographers automate some parts of their post-production cycle. So having the ability to kind of adopt some of these tools to help speed up your workflow, turn around your content to your client as quickly as possible is definitely a threat to be aware of. As AI is getting better and better, adopting some of these tools and technology is highly recommended to help service your customers and be able to provide a good service to your client. All right, my name is Samir. That's all I've got for you. So definitely a new channel here. So if you like the content you see, feel free to hit subscribe, hit like, leave me a comment, do something so that way I can create more content like this. All right, I'll see you in the next video.